Welcome back to another sci-fi episode where psychology and finances collide. Today, we'll be examining how we think, feel, and behave with money as it relates to neuroplasticity. So really, welcome back to another financial pain management clinic. These are going to be all the things that improve physical pain and financial pain through rewiring our brains. So I played around a little bit with the title for this episode, Shape the Brain, Reshape Finances, Rewire Your Brain to Rewire Your Finances. But this is exactly what neuroplasticity does. So the reason I thought of this topic is because I have so many clients who try and try again to do something different with their finances. They get excited in the session, they go out, we revisit, and nothing has changed. They were gung-ho for the first week and then fizzled out. And that is understandable. After all, it's very difficult to break habits, and we're going to find out why in just a moment. But what's really interesting is neuroplasticity is about introducing new behaviors. And introducing new behaviors is instrumental in rewiring your brain. The initial epic fail of introducing that new behavior is instrumental in rewiring your brain. And trying again is instrumental in rewiring your brain. That's how neuroplasticity operates. So I can go ahead and right out of the gate validate for you that all the pain in your perceived failures when it comes to not reaching those financial goals or reaching that savings goal, this is a difficult process, and usually everyone's going to go through that pain in the brain when it comes to your finances. So sure, these initial steps jumpstart the process, but the follow-through leads to that structural brain change we desire, so that we can repeat the behavior over and over, making a once arduous task simple and automatic. And when I have conversations with people out and about, whether on the installation or at a party, when I talk about what I do, I'll have two completely different people. I'll have one set of people say, "Oh, finances are so easy. Why are people struggling with that?" And on the inside, I'm being nice and acting a little shy so that I don't have to engage in an uncomfortable conversation. But it's easy for them. But they don't realize that it was easy for them after their own period of struggle, because we all have been there. We've all done it. But they're living in a period of peace and ease because of the neuroplasticity. And then you have the other group of folks like, "Oh yeah, I could totally understand why that job is required within the Department of War and why someone would be hired to do what you do, Olivia, because I struggle with finances. So I can only imagine how difficult it is for a new soldier or a soldier who now has a family and who is deployed, et cetera, or even Department of War civilians who are struggling with security clearances. It's not just simple for everyone. And so for this episode, let's use the example of tracking spending and building an initial $2,000 savings. And that's because I see where clients struggle the most, is getting to actual savings, not playing around with it, not the $5 allotment a month, but the actual getting to $2,000 because they haven't touched it, they haven't used it, and getting to that place. That is going to take time and effort and neuroplasticity. So if you're tired of not reaching your financial goals, make sure you listen to this entire episode. So let me kick it off with neuroscientist Dr. Richard Davidson. He is known for his research in neuroplasticity. He reminds us that the brain is shaped by experience. And because we have a choice about what experiences we want to use to shape our brain, we have a responsibility to choose the experiences that will shape the brain toward the wise and wholesome. So if we want the $2,000 in emergency savings, if that's our initial goal, we have to add the experiences that are going to eventually shape the structure of our brain to keep us in a habit of doing that and actually get us into a habit of motivation. It is bidirectional. Anytime you get frustrated with a financial goal you can't seem to see through, that's an indicator your brain needs you to introduce new experiences. Perhaps the goal is reaching that initial $2,000 in emergency savings. So tracking spending is a great initial behavior to introduce. And listen, our brains are wonderful organs that crave routine and structure, and you'll see why in a minute. So when we introduce something new, it really does feel like a pain in the brain. But just like our muscles get comfortable with gym routines, so do our brains. But if we want to see gains, we can't allow for the dreaded plateau. We have to shake up the exercise routine for our bodies and brains to be shaped the way we desire. And before you turn that dial, Olivia, I sure don't exercise. And I've tried that before. So if I can't get that down, then I surely can't get this down. Well, not true. It depends on how you're responding to it and what behaviors, experiences, values you're tying to it as well. So maybe exercise isn't for you, but perhaps personal financial management, organization, that can be something you can accomplish. So in a nutshell, neuroplasticity is brain shaping. We introduce new behavior so it can change through experience. So again, tracking spending will get us to that savings goal. It's initially painful, like when we introduce a new exercise, and it seems like you're spending more time stretching after that spending, so we're feeling overloaded as well. And that's the same with our physical bodies as well. We work a certain muscle and we feel good about it, but then it aches and aches and aches for a whole week. And then we think, man, I'm not doing that again. I spent all week stretching that. But we need to learn to do that with our finances. It's not always going to be comfortable, but there are gains to be had if we stick it out. So new behaviors includes thoughts and action. So incorporating new language into how we talk to ourselves and think about ourselves, others, and money creates brain change and therefore behavioral change. And the more we repeat the thought, behavior, or action, the stronger the associated neuronal connections become. Neuronal being a fancy word for neurons, which include the cells in our brain. Let me pause right here and give credit to Dr. Jonah Paquette, who's lectured on this topic before, so that we make sure we give him some credit here. So he was giving updates on positive psychology, and I couldn't help but write copious notes on how this applies to financial well-being as well. So when it comes to neuroplasticity, the kicker is we have to practice. And just like our bodies aren't going to whip into shape with just one visit to the gym, neither will our brains deliver the result we're seeking with just 1 week of trying to save. The good news is our brains are not truly hardwired, as previously thought. Our brains are soft-wired and on the ready for new information to incorporate. But these actions need to be deliberate and repeated. So I have some information here from a psychologist who wrote a really good piece and just summarized neuroplasticity in a nutshell. And I will find her name here in just a moment so that I can give her some street cred. It's Dr. Courtney Ackerman. She wrote an article back in 2018 on what is neuroplasticity. a psychologist explains. And she also seems to follow positive psychology and all the good things that are coming from that. And I like how she really describes what neuroplasticity is. And she notes, and I'm going to quote her here, she says, for many decades, it was thought that the brain was a non-renewable organ. What a great term. Anyway, continuing the quote, that brain cells are bestowed in a finite amount and they slowly die as we age. End quote. So our brains are renewable organs. And she goes on to explain the difference between neuroplasticity and neurogenesis. Neuroplasticity deals with the structure of our brain and how it forms new connections and pathways. There are some buzzwords going out in mental health sectors and even amongst influencers where they'll talk about create new neural pathways. Well, we can give credit to the neuroscientists and neuropsychologists that are studying this phenomenon. So again, neuroplasticity, it deals with brain structure, the new connections and pathways, and how we are wiring and firing. And when we create a financial goal, for example, when we're stating that goal, when we're writing that goal down, we're creating some new wiring as we're doing that. But it's the firing that we have a hard time achieving, like getting that spark for those connections to continue and connect. But then she differentiates neurogenesis from neuroplasticity, which deals with structure, to the ability to grow neurogenesis, where we're growing new neurons. We are regenerating new brain cells. That's the most simplistic way to describe neurogenesis. Neuroplasticity is the structure and neurogenesis is the material. And I love how she states that neurogenesis is the even more amazing ability of the brain to grow new neurons. So they're both amazing. They're both incredible. And they both have something to do with what we're wanting to even do with our financial goals. So what an incredible way to just kind of reframe financial goals and how to achieve what we're really wanting. So here's something else that is interesting. In functional MRI scans, these neuroplasticity changes or brain structural changes can be seen within 2 months. If you guys remember from organizational development or leadership classes, or even sometimes self-help and personal development books, you've heard about it takes 30 days to change a habit. Well, according to the new neuroscience and also what psychologists are finding, we kind of probably need to put a pin in that and state that actually it could be within 30 to 60 days. Some of us might need a little more time for the rewiring to occur and then for the firing to occur. So hopefully this gives you some level of validation that you don't need to beat yourselves up too much when you're not reaching those financial goals. Some of us need a little bit more time. So the process of building new neural pathways was best described to me like this. And it was in a women's meeting at a church, and our speaker was talking about spiritual practices. And so I heard about this for the first time from someone who had nothing to do with psychology, but I was completely captivated and couldn't wait to read about it myself. After she gave the talk, I went and researched it, and this was years and years ago. But I love how she put it best. She said, over time, our habits and practices and routines create these entrenched channels, which neuroscientists reveal as neural pathways. They are so entrenched, they appear as ruts, and many times feel like ruts. And that was such a great visual for me because If we even look at the brain structure and we look at all the functional MRI scans and we look right down to the microscopic level, what is happening with neuronal wiring and firing, it really is a pathway. It's like a roadway, but sometimes it's a rut that we're in because it is such a habit, especially if we haven't been in the habit of saving or tracking our money. So not only do we need to build a new neural pathway, but so much so to where we continuously pave over the old roadway to get to a new roadway, if that makes sense. It's almost like a sticky feeling that we get when that desired change that we seek, saving that initial 2,000, feels impossible and painful. You really feel like you're stuck in a rut. Yet the fix, although painful, is continued movement. Again, this is a chronic financial pain series that we're working with. And you're here back for your checkup at the financial pain management clinic. And so, yeah, it's painful, but with continued movement and building the scaffolding to get us out of that rut with new behavior is what's going to help. And perhaps that new behavior, again, as I said before, is as simple as tracking spending. Doesn't make it simple, but it could be that next thing that is needed. So neuroplasticity was once thought to steadily wane after childhood, those formative years, but new research shows it never ceases and remains an invaluable asset throughout the lifespan. And yeah, kids, these kids are learning. I've raised my own. They're learning so much before kindergarten. And think about it. They're learning at the most basic human level how to eat, how to walk, talk, obey simple commands, use the restroom independently, socialize, forge friendships and alliances, tolerate distress, cope with all the things outside of their control. Oh my goodness, it causes me so much anxiety just to think about what a pre-kindergartner has to learn. And a lot of kids are even turned away from kindergarten or preschool because they haven't learned those basic things. So there's so much that has to be learned. So I can understand why scientists previously thought that neuroplasticity waned outside of the formative years. Now, obviously, age can impact what I'll be talking about later, which is BDNF, your brain-derived neurotrophic factor. So age can decrease that over time, but we still have the ability to do new things, try new things, incorporate new things, create new habits. That never ends. Okay, so let's jump right in now to what neuroscientists found with age. It was not the driving factor for neuroplasticity, but that special protein that I just mentioned, which is critical or crucial in neurogenesis. Again, neurogenesis and neuroplasticity are different. Neurogenesis is that cell turnover in the brain that builds new neurons. And neuroplasticity is that structural change, the rewiring and the firing. So this protein called brain-derived neurotrophic factor, or BDNF for short, assists with neural wiring or connections, which promote efficient firing and neuronal growth in the prefrontal cortex, which is your decision-making portion of your brain, and the hippocampus, which is partially memory storage or short-term memory storage and where it will direct memories to go in the future. So BDNF is heralded as the miracle grow of the brain. So hang with me. We're going to get to where this applies to finances in just a moment. So how incredible that we're never too old to learn new things, try new things, and succeed at new things. So in our personal finances, we get discouraged when we try and fail. Then we give up prematurely before all the new wiring and firing can occur. If we want to try something new to reshape our finances, perhaps we're better served if we change the language to, I want to reshape my brain. And by the reshaping of your brain, you reshape your finances. And stressing out or feeling hopeless about the perceived inability to achieve that financial goal not only perpetuates a vicious cycle of pain and avoidance, but on a molecular level, you really are decreasing your chances of succeeding because two huge factors in decreasing BDNF are stress and depression. Wow, talk about chronic pain. Stress and depression can definitely meet that criteria. And it can cause us to suffer more in our imagination than in reality. But two huge factors in increasing BDNF is exercise, which increases blood flow and oxygen to your brain, thereby countering symptoms of depression while simultaneously decreasing stress. And then also healthy fats and omega-3s, which are also proven buffers in mental health. So Olivia, not only are you telling me that to reshape my finances, I need to reshape my brain, and now you're telling me I need to reshape my body. Not necessarily, but because neuroplasticity is a bidirectional process, when we do one good thing for ourselves, it will have a ripple effect in other areas in our bodies and in our brains. And I love what I read. I'm such a geek when it comes to medical journals. I love to read about anything that I can get my hands on. But what you'll see over and over again, if you ever get into that habit, is that whatever's good for the heart is good for the brain, and vice versa. And so it's a way for me to pat myself on the back that just because I'm not running anymore, because that was taken away from me with my last surgery, but I still am doing all these other things that continue to promote a healthy heart and a healthy brain, and vice versa. And we could think of the same with our finances. Just because we don't have everything perfect in our finances, the one thing right that I'm doing with my finances could have a ripple effect into other areas of my finances. So if saving that initial $2,000 is viewed more as a pipe dream than a realistic goal, there's something deep within the recesses of your brain or even your relationship that needs to be challenged. Doing the same old thing, expecting your savings account to grow, just won't happen. If I can help you understand the brain and the psychology of learning and mastery, there'll be more buy-in and you'll feel more empowered. That's why I bring these things to you. And to remind you that every little thing that you do in your finances matters. Because neuroplasticity, which is brain shaping, requires us to practice one new behavior for just 2 to 3 months. And that can become a habit and eventually a skill. So another thing that is wonderful about this is that what was once a short-term state can become a long-term trait. So if the state of tracking your expenses starts as an intentional behavior that requires much prompting, that's okay. Don't beat yourself up for that. That is an intentional, mechanical, necessary thing to move towards that structural change that you're wanting, to eventually become a trait, where tracking is now an automatic response that has led to many new behaviors in the in-between, and now you're in the habit of stalking your money, not just tracking your money, but stalking your money, knowing where it's going, and you have a greater sense of control and understanding. And now you're feeling empowered, and now your savings has multiplied. Again, that bidirectional process. So your state was once volatile, frustrating, and filled with emotion, but now your trait is fixed, strategic, and filled with elation. So again, With this being a bidirectional process, experiences change our brain, which in turn make these positive experiences more accessible and likely to be repeated. It's at the forefront of our minds, which is at the prefrontal cortex. Locked in hope comes with that, as well as locked in motivation, locked in movement away from the suffering and the pain. And I love how one of the psychologists puts it, a superpower that can be used towards health or misery. So what experiences or data do you want to feed your brain? And in the next episode, I'll give you a little hint of what you can try. And that is the concept of gratitude and all the beautiful neurochemicals and changes in your brain that occur and the different regions of your brain that you activate and how that also applies to your finances and your money mentality. I hope this has been helpful in reducing your chronic financial pain. Just that one thing to try. And I hope that you rate and review the pod wherever you listen. I can't wait to see you at our next chapter.